We always lean on our friends, of course, at the Illinois Policy Institute, illinoispolicy.org for the latest cutting-edge analysis, nonpartisan look at the way things go. And the thing I love about Illinois Policy is they are quick to critique, but they are even quicker to offer suggestions. They're not just a wrecking ball. They've got ideas on how we should do things and things that make this state a lot better. And we've got another member of the staff of Illinois Policy joining us this morning. That is the chief economist for Illinois Policy, Dr. Orphe Divounguy. Orphe, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How badly did I butcher your last name?
No, that was perfect. That was fine. Thank you.
Outstanding. You're the
chief. You did better than most.
I'm doing my best. Chief economist at the Illinois Policy Institute. Your work's been published everywhere: CNN Business, USA Today, The Washington Examiner, Tribune, Crane Chicago Business, Wall Street Journal, Newsday, on and on and on and on. You're a man who knows his stuff, and you've got a great piece up at illinoispolicy.org titled "Nearly 1.5 million Illinois workers risk layoffs or reduced hours from COVID-19 economic fallout." 1.5 million of us.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you know, the lockdown was a big hit for most small businesses and their employees. You know, you're looking at industries that generate roughly 11% of all economic activity and produced in the state. And to make that real for most people, that's around $100 billion of economic activity in 2019. And we're just at the beginning. You know, those are just industries that were directly affected by the lockdown. We're talking about hotels, restaurants, bars. You think about, sports activity, the sports leagues in Illinois, the stadiums, the hot dog stands, all the businesses that are there that basically employ people and also provide services to people who go and watch these events.
It's amazing. You put out in your piece those places that you'd mentioned: arts, entertainment, recreation, accommodation, food service, generated more than $37 billion for our economy 2019. That averages out to about $103 million a day. That's $103 million a day we are not looking at right now.
That's right. That's right. You know, the worst part, not just for the business owners that face business failures, but it's also for these employees, right? These people, these families. It's so many families that are being affected. You know, they produce 11% of the state's economic output, but they employ 24% of the state, right? It's a lot of small businesses. 77% of businesses in the state are small businesses with fewer than 50 employees each. So those are families that are feeling it. And that's we put out this piece to kind of highlight the pain that so many people are going through right now. You know, you got economists on Wall Street talking about a 24 to 50% decline in economic activity, with the unemployment rate going all the way to 30%. You know, Janet Yellen, former Federal Reserve chairwoman, came out and said, "Hey, the unemployment rate we could be facing a 30% unemployment rate." That's disastrous.
That is disastrous, and that's why we keep hearing about how the stimulus measures that the federal government is looking at, how that is hopefully is going to offset some of this. That perhaps when an all clear is given, or maybe we can start to resume some of our lives, we'll start roaring back. But that damage is going to stick around for quite a while, isn't it?
Well, I mean, we're hopeful. We're hopeful that the stimulus package and that. The state also, not just the federal government, the state also can do some things to avoid business failures, right? If the economy can kind of go into a self-induced coma, and then after the public health crisis is averted, can just come right back where it was at in February. In January and February, it would be wonderful. Economists talk about a V-shaped recovery, right? So if we can dip and come right back out of it, that would be great. The only way to do that is to avoid business failures. It's also to avoid families from, defaulting on loans, missing, paying their bills, defaulting on mortgage payments. To do that, we have to make sure that they have enough resources. So at the state level, the federal government is sending checks to families, but at the state level, there are things we can actually do. And delaying property tax collections, for example, could provide relief for small business owners, right? So, if you keep your people on, you keep your employees on, and you don't have to pay these extra taxes at the state level, that will be a step in the right direction. Another thing that we can do that some people have mentioned is reduce this uncertainty about the progressive income tax on the ballot in November. So imagine the economy is just starting to recover, right? We get past the public health crisis averted. We get past this whole crisis, and we get to roughly August, September, and things are starting to look good again. And then these businesses are faced with a tax hike that will be disastrous for the recovery. That would absolutely kill the recovery right and halt it right in its tracks. So we have to do things also at the state level, and not just wait for the federal government. We got to provide relief for small businesses to make sure they keep their employees on and to avoid the risk of default.
If you're just joining us, we're spending some time with the chief economist for Illinois Policy, illinoispolicy.org, and that is Dr. Orphe Divounguy. And you make some interesting points here, and I think one of the ones that I'd like you to clarify a little bit, because you mentioned this, with the economic shock that has gone along with this, it simultaneously causes a demand shock and a supply shock.
That's right. So let's start with the supply shock. What does that mean? Well, all of a sudden, we have this crisis that requires people to distance themselves from each other, right? So people cannot actually go to work. And if you can't go to work, well, production slows down. You're looking around the stores and you're seeing shortages of so many items, not just toilet paper, not just hand sanitizer. So many things are missing, right? So I go down the aisle and look for my favorite frozen pizzas, and, well, they're not there anymore, right? So many things are missing because there's been supply chains have been broken across the world. There are so many products that we're importing from other places. And as production has slowed and people are not able to work, there's not as much of the stuff that you would normally, consume every day. So that's the supply problem, right? And then at the same time, the fact that people are not working anymore and that people are losing their jobs means that people are not able to buy stuff, right? And so that's the demand shock. So at the same time as we have fewer goods and services being produced around the whole world, you also have people losing their jobs and not being able to buy stuff. And so that's why this problem this crisis is unprecedented. It's huge, and it's very difficult to cope with a problem like this. If you think back about at the Great Recession, when you looked at the Great Recession, we had a demand problem, right? So there was less of liquidity. People were losing their jobs. They weren't able to buy stuff. And so the Federal Reserve Bank steps in. The federal government steps in. You give people money, and they're able to resume normal economic activity. In this case, even giving people money is not enough because there's just not enough stuff being produced. So we're seeing shortages of goods and services throughout. When you go to stores, it's really hard to find things now except food, basically.
So in order to make this, I guess, more palatable and easier for Illinoisans to go through, you have some suggestions in your piece what Illinois must do to take further action to ensure businesses are able to survive and recover as quickly as possible. One of those being postpone at least the next installment of property taxes.
Oh, absolutely. We have to make sure that Illinoisans are not facing taxes and fees at this time, right? So to at least alleviate the demand side of the problem, right? We have to make sure that, and the Federal Reserve Bank is doing a great job, right? The Federal Reserve Bank, but also the federal government is doing a good job to try to make sure businesses are getting enough cash to keep their workers on, right? And to kind of hold off this period instead of firing workers, right? So some businesses have furloughed employees, and then they're ready to take them on again as soon as the public health crisis is averted. In Illinois, we don't have a rainy day fund, and that's unfortunate, right? We've been talking about this for quite some time, the need for a rainy day fund, because rainy days come. This is one of those times where it would have been great to have a rainy day fund to help struggling businesses and families. Since we don't have access to a rainy day fund, what the state can do is waive all these fees and and extra taxes, including property taxes. You know, we could borrow in the short term. The Constitution allows us to do that. We could borrow in the short term and actually, you know, help businesses, help local governments by basically waiving property taxes without local governments suffering a decline in revenue. That could be one thing we can do. The other thing we can do is, you know, just follow Mayor Lightfoot's lead. You know, Mayor Lightfoot came out and said, you know, no more fees. We can waive fees and money owed to the city and parking tickets, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, and I think that was great policy. The last thing Illinoisans need is to have to worry about having to pay, you know, the city or the state extra fees and when they can hardly pay the bills. You know, the month of April comes around. You know, we're what, the 6th or 7th of April now, and people's bills are piling up, and they're worried about how they're going to pay the bills, and then they might get a check from the federal government, but that's going to be a one-time check. You know, what happens in May? What happens in June? Are we going to be out of this whole thing, right? There's a lot of uncertainty, and so we need to do everything we can to provide relief to Illinoisans.
What you guys need to do is get over to IllinoisPolicy.org and read this piece, along with all the other great information that's available on that site every day. The piece is called Nearly 1.5 Million Illinois Workers Risk Layoffs or Reduced Hours from COVID-19 Economic Fallout. It is well-written, well-researched by people who know what they're doing. And one of those people is the guy who's been spending some time with us right here, Dr. Orphe Divounguy. Thank you very much for taking time out of what I know is a busy schedule, and we appreciate the information. We'll look forward to getting together with Illinois Policy again very soon in the near future.
Oh, thank you for having me. I look forward to that.